No
Yes?
more break time.
All right. Oh. So, we started talking about the business model canvas, and we kind of already said that there are two parts. One is what the customers see, and this is kind of, I don't know if you've been introduced to the metaphor of the business model theater. The front part is what your customers see. So you have a product, a value proposition, whatever, and this your customers see. But then there is as important part in the background, the backstage, and this is where we can use our lovely star model. And this is about how do we organize. So once we have a business model canvas, how do we implement the business model through organizational development and design? We can talk that maybe there are 3 steps. You can start by determining what does your company wants to do. So determine your organization goal and mission. Then you can start talking about a strategy, but then you need to implement this strategy, otherwise it will just become a piece of paper. And one tool to do this is the business model, is the star model, sorry. I'm sure you know everything about it by now, but just to go through it very fast, there is the strategy, there is the structure, there is the processes, there is the reward system, and the people practices. But this doesn't just stop here. All these things together create the company behaviors, and the company behaviors affect the culture and the performance of the company. So if you remember the model that we started with, the efficiency and effectiveness, this is so related with the STAR model, for example. And the reason why there are all these lines in this illustration is not because the person was feeling very artistic, but it's because the elements must be aligned. And this is also something, maybe sometime that I've seen that the students struggle to use the business model, the STAR model, because they just fill it out and they're like, okay, but this doesn't tell me anything. And maybe focusing on the alignment of the different parts would be a valuable discussion with your group members. And then, as I promised before, we're going to go through the radar company STAR model. And this is what Casper was talking before about the different parts of the report. This will be your occasional analysis, for example. So just to give you an overview of the different components, and then we're going to dive into details for each one of them. But for example, the strategy, we've seen it before, it's like deliver the world's highest quality and most advanced Doppler radars on time and every time. Their company is quite a flat company that have a lot of functional areas that work on the product. Their processes, they have a lot of different parallel processing in research and development, and it's kind of, okay, this group is developing this radar, this group is developing this radar, and these groups don't talk very much, so there is not so many lateral processes. Then, when you talk about rewards, they don't really have any monetary rewards, so to incentivize the people, it's more about the people are motivated because they're working in something really cool that they really like. So it's what you would call intrinsic motivation. And about the people, they have really specialized workforce from different engineering disciplines. And what we've seen from our analysis that we did there, they have a bit of kind of individualistic mindset people. You can say why that's. And then once you have this kind of very fast overview of the company, you can start asking yourself, okay, there is something here that doesn't work. And to keep it short, because we just have half an hour left, but what we have seen when we were analyzing the company, and it was a very long analysis, that there is a misalignment between the strategy and the processes. So if you say that you want to develop the most advanced Doppler radars on time and every time, this research and development process did not really support it. So there was a misalignment here. And this is actually was the topic of my thesis. How can we solve this misalignment? It took me 6 months, so excuse me if I don't go too much in details with it, but I'll do my best to explain it to you. So what this misalignment cost. So the company was effective, but it was not efficient. They had kind of late deliverables and bad estimation of the development times. And you can see that this connects. They're already kind of failing in their strategy if they are late on deliverables. And the culture, we saw that there was low power densities and kind of focus on long-term and independent work. And this didn't really work for the research and development department. All right, but as we can jump in each part now. So the strategy, just to make sure that you understand the difference between the business model and the strategy. It's one of the, I think, hard things of the course, and just make sure that you understood, maybe explain to each other, does it really work? Then another model that you could use in this part of the course is about how you achieve the organizational control. So should you focus on the new events, or should you focus on just doing what you can do good? What do you think the Bible, the radar company is doing right now? Any takers? No? Well, we will see it later. But if then you want to really dive into the company radar strategy, we've seen this slide before, but just to show you that maybe this is a good way to answer this part of the STAR model, you can just Google the company that you're looking for, and they always have the strategy out, and then you can find the most interesting things, like I did here, highlighting them in black and putting them in your report. Then, if you talk about the structure part of the STAR model, there are a lot of models that you could use. For example, you can talk about what is actually creating the structure that we have. Why is the company organized like this? And once you figure this out, you can analyze but how they're actually organized. So what is the criteria that they use to organize themselves? Is it done by knowledge? Is it done by nation where they work, or whatever? When you have this clear, and you have a kind of a picture of which are the different parts of the organization, you can think about, okay, is this how the different parts relate to each other? Is this a very functional organization where you have different functions that have different knowledge and don't work together that much? Or is this a product organization where you just have a project and you put the people that you need together? Or maybe it's somewhere in between? If you talk about radar company, I can show you their organizational structure, and you can see that it's very functional driven. So you have the different parts, and for example, in R&D, then you have different knowledge areas. So they organize their company based on knowledge and technology. And this is just, they also makes you understand how the company thinks about their people, what do they want them to do. And if you talk about processes, the STAR model has two kind of processes, so either vertical, that goes up and down, and when you talk about vertical process, you can talk, for example, about how does the manager control the employees, so what kind of control theories there are. There are different models to do this. This is one of them. And then there are the horizontal processes, that is the way maybe a team works between each other. And I think a very nice model for this here is the types of task interdependencies. That it's, for example, especially if you work in an area as the R&D, it can really give you some clear pointers on what to look out in a company. And of course, companies are not always perfect. Conflicts arise, and this model, I'm pretty sure maybe in your cases you will find some conflicts from different stakeholders inside the company. So maybe this model could help you understand why the conflicts are here. Is it because there is bad authority, or maybe there are not enough people? So of course, if there are not enough people, somebody is going to struggle with that. Yeah, and then if we put all this together and we talk about the radar company, what do we see? We have talked about the way they organize work, which is kind of, they want to develop a new radar, okay? The system engineer starts working on the systems, the digital engineer start working on the coding or whatever, and then they say, they meet once, they work for some months, and then they meet again. And of course, when they meet again, what happens is that the things that they did were not so aligned. And that's what the developers were complaining about, is that they split the task and then they didn't really have a lot of occasion to talk to each other, and then there was some misalignments when the deadline arrives. Yes. And this was the main problem that we are seeing in the alignment of the star model. So keep it in mind because we're going to go through it again later. Then you can talk about rewards, and there are many different models to rewards. Probably there are courses and courses about how to organize your reward system. You can talk about how the job is characterized, why employees are motivated, and we can see here maybe there are two main areas of going through. There is intrinsic motivation, that is kind of as in the radar company, where people want to work because they really like what they're doing. And then there is the more extrinsic motivation, that is maybe because you have a good pay and you have a good career or all these kind of things. And of course, this is just a note, especially for engineers like us, the intrinsic motivation works much better. And actually I have a small video for you to see about the danger of focusing on extrinsic motivation. And it's, and don't get offended, but it's an experiment of monkeys, where basically, you cannot see it, sorry. Yeah, this never works, of course. This is an experiment conducted on capuchin monkey that from a scientist that used monkey to see how does our moral values are used in other species. And basically what happens in this experiment, I'm not sure if the audio is on, but I'm just going to explain it to you. There are two monkeys sitting in a cage next to each other, and they know each other, they're good friends, and they have to do a task. So basically the researcher puts a rock in the cage, and the monkey gets the rock and gives it back to the researcher. And in the beginning, both monkeys get a cucumber, a piece of cucumber, and they're really happy, and they do it again and again and again. And at a certain point, one of the monkey gets a cucumber, and one of the monkey gets a grape, and you will see what happens.
First piece she eats, then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task, and we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us, and that's what she does. And she gets a grape, and she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us. And she gets cucumber again. So this is basically...
Hi. Okay. Hi. Enough monkey videos for today. But I think Casper works a lot with performance management, and it's very easy to say, okay, if you want someone to do something better, maybe just give him some more money. But as you can see, many times this is not easy, and you can see, maybe you can think about a time where you think that you deserve a better grade than one of your colleagues, and I think, at least I remember that I had reactions similar to this with some professors.
This is a perfect example of perceived justice, or the reward imbalance that we talked about last time. As soon as you feel that there's something about injustice, then it's a balance between you and the organization. And if you don't get the reward you want, then you're going to do something else to tip the scale in your favor. And people don't really think about it, but it's just going to be a natural response, just like the monkeys. You can be less flexible, you can go home early, you can actually be destructive at your work. And the places we see this most pronounced is that if you have a company that has a super HR policy, it's stated on the website, we're going to be the best at something, and then they screw over their employees. They get really pissed, and it's a reaction that is so predictable that people are going to change that balance. If you're going to screw me over, I'm going to do something towards the company. I'm going to steal, I'm going to do something. and it's very predictable. So it's a nice mechanism. The monkeys are just perfect for that.
Yeah, and then if you consider yourself as a manager in this monkey giving rock factory, so what happened when you try to pay one person more is that actually your productivity dropped by 50% instead of increasing, because before you had 2 monkeys that work okay, and now you have 1 monkey that works and 1 that throws the rock at you, so it doesn't really go so well. And that's maybe why all the kind of knowledge companies as the Radar one, they kind of try not to focus too much on the monetary rewards and all these kind of bonuses and stuff, and they focus instead of the intrinsic motivation. So you want to make sure that there is something there that the people are motivated to work for. In this case, I'm sure it's about the fact that you're working on something that is top-notch quality, so you just feel proud every day when you go home because you developed the best that there is. Yeah, and then we can talk about the people practices. Yeah, also this is a very large area, and it touches recruitment, training, performance, appraisal, pay, labor relationship, and there probably you can find 10 different models for each of these components. So you may want to investigate in the theory that there is from Timo, which is the more relevant ones. If we need to talk about the Radar company, they were just focusing a lot maybe on hiring people from engineering disciplines, because I guess it's a bit hard for someone that is not engineer to develop a new radar. And then they're highly specialized. And as we were talking before, they kind of have a individualistic mindset that we're going to talk about later. And then we just had a discussion with Casper during the break that these people practices, for example, it's one of the things that change a lot in companies. So we were talking about Deloitte, and I was saying to him, for example, now, if I see my managers, they're all from CBS students, but all the new people that they hire, they're all from DTU. And why is that? It's not because suddenly better people from DTU are applying, and it's just because the market is changing, and so you need to change a part of your star model to make it work.
If you look at the value proposition for accounting, for instance, it's not going to change. We need our books to be balanced. We need someone to verify them. But the technology is changing. What used to be an accountant going through the books and validating they were okay, suddenly this is changing into becoming something that we can treat with AI, some sort of automated process. We have most of our data digitalized. Now we just need the rules. We need something to change that. The existing people, the accountants, they know the practice. So as soon as we decoded their practice, put it into a computer, we don't need them. And that's going to be a super change in these companies. And it's interesting to see that we're taking in engineers and computer scientists and putting them to work with the accountants. And that match is not going to be good. So perhaps we should think of a different way to treat this. It's perhaps not a good idea to have them in the same business unit. We might just say that we're going to have a separate business unit for this type of operations that is computer specialized. And then we're going to slowly phase out the other unit as soon as the market drops. But we need to have this because it's a different price that you can offer the same product. So huge pressure.
Yeah, I'll bring back this suggestion to the office. All right, a full star model. This is always, I think I could talk about what I just told you for about 6 hours if I wanted to, but just I try to give it to you in 15 minutes. And as we said, please remember to check that everything is aligned. So if we move back to our casual analysis, now we have seen all the star model of the Radar company, and we're still convinced that the problem is in the processes. So what are you going to do now, students in Timo? You're going to start working on the solution. And maybe, since you see that the problem is in the processes, your solution should be a new processes. And that's actually what happened in this company. And they try to use something that is called an Agile Development method. I don't know who is familiar about it, but it's just a new way to organize work that is developing a lot in the IT world, especially, in which you just don't do one thing and you bring it to the end, but you have a lot of discussions, and you have a lot of iterations in which you say, is this what we're doing good? And then every day you meet and you discuss, is everything aligned? Everybody is happy about what they're doing. So if you talk about the Timo theory, before, remember that I said that they were in a pool performance, and now the engineers are starting to work in a reciprocal performance, because they don't just work as separate entities, but they're talking all the time between each other. And this, we can argue why it was good for the radar company. I think Casper has worked for this for about 1 year now, 1 year and a half. So maybe it's a bit an ambitious goal to discuss it in detail, why, but please feel free to ask reason after. But basically what happens when they start doing this is that now they're able to match much better what the customer wants, because very frequently they stop and they say, okay, are we doing what the customer wants? Instead of asking to the customer maybe every 6 months or every year. And then they have a much better idea of how the development is going. So maybe you see that you're late, not 1 week before the deadline, but 6 months before the deadline. And it's very useful for a company. So this is the solution. They're going to pass to this reciprocal performance. Let's see how this impacts now our overall star model. So now we have an iterative process based on collaboration and reciprocal performance, and this is working very well, let's say. Maybe it's not, but for the purpose of this course, let's say that it is. Therefore, there is not anymore this misalignment between strategy and processes, because now the processes are able to develop the radar as the customer needs them and in the time where the customer needs them. However, this is not the end of your analysis, because you have to think, okay, we did new processes, what happens to the rest of the star model? So for example, what I've noticed when I was studying this company is that the people practice was a bit challenged, because as I said a few times before, the developers had a very individualistic mindset, and now they have to work together with a group every day. So what happens to them? Maybe they will be convinced that this is the better way to work, or maybe they'll have to leave the company and new people have to be brought in. And then at the same time, the structure has to change, because on this agile way of working, there is no kind of boss. The team decides by themselves what they have to do. So what the result is that there is even a flatter organization than before. And this, what happens to this? What is the result of these new processes that we talk about? On the performance side, we increased our delivery speed. So we are more effective in recognizing what the customer needs, and we are able to provide it to them. And in the culture, we put down even more the power distance, and now we have much more teamwork, which is a big cultural change. All right? And then you can keep going. This is kind of the part 4 of your report, where you talk about implementation. And you can see, okay, how does this strategy has to change? Are we focusing enough on improving the current operation, or maybe we need to focus more on responding to the new events? What kind of conflicts can this new way of working bring? So maybe now there are a lot of people working together, so there are some people that are needed in 2 different places. There are 2 interdependencies, and maybe it's still a problem that the deadline is just too short. And then there is a model to implement a new change in any organization, which is a 4-step model. So if you talk about our TIMO report, first we saw that they were not very efficient, so they need to change that. And they decided to change it by establishing new processes, and now they have to do it. And this is probably the hardest part. So it's not over when you find a new solution. And when you find a new solution, always remember that it will always affect the business model canvas. So for example, in this case, if we have new processes, probably what is more effective is the key activities. We will change the way we develop. And this is a big change. And of course, hopefully, we will have solved the problem of the competitive advantage that we have seen in the beginning of the case. Any question about this case? What do you think? You think you can make this in your report? Somebody's saying maybe. Casper is saying yes.
You can do it, I know.
So I have seen it doing it before. So I think it's feasible. And you're 6 people working together, so you can do it for sure. If you use the right type of processes, maybe you can start working Agile as well. But just, I hope this was helpful for you to see a case end to end. I'm not going to, if you want to reach out to me, you have my emails and my phone numbers in the first slide. Today I didn't talk too much about Deloitte because I wanted to give you try to give you as much as possible interesting information. But of course, if you're interested in Deloitte, I've put here some links of some events that are coming up in the next few weeks that we're having in our office. And I hope that I would see some of you there because it's a really cool opportunity to learn something more about consultants, and it's good fun. All right. Thank you for having me. I'll give it back to Casper.
So we're just going to do a short 10-minute break, and then we're going to change the scenery. So 5 minutes past, and we're ready again. So don't go too far.